It's great. We share stories, but it's that lifelong brotherhood. You went to prep and it just means something that we didn't know going through it, but now we completely understand what that is. So literally lifelong friends just because of the brotherhood of prep.
Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 62 of the Rambler Podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. Today on the Rambler Podcast, I'm happy to welcome Mr. David Cullen. Dave is a proud alumnus of Cathedral Prep, graduating in 1973, and he has deep roots here in the Erie community. One of 11 children, David and his family have a long history with both Prep and Villa Maria Academy, with 5 of his brothers attending Prep and 4 of his sisters attending Villa. His daughter Erin also graduated from Villa in 1997. David's career is marked by an array of accomplishments in finance and entrepreneurial world. He earned his undergraduate degree in finance from John Carroll University and an MBA from Gannon University, along with holding a Chartered Financial Analyst designation. David began his career at Marine Bank, now PNC, and has worked at various financial institutions, including the Bank of Oklahoma. Not one to shy away from new opportunities, David has founded multiple businesses throughout his career. He created Heritage Trust Company, the only privately owned trust bank in Western Pennsylvania, which was later sold to Northwest Bank. David has also launched Parent Broadcast, one of the earliest school-to-parent emergency notification services, which started right here at Cathedral Prep. His most recent venture is Evident Financial, a registered investment advisory firm based in Erie, offering financial management solutions to individuals and businesses. In addition to his professional successes, David maintained a strong connection to Cathedral Prep, having served on the board of directors, including as the chairman of the board during the transition of leadership to Father Jabo becoming the headmaster of Cathedral Prep in 2000. David continues to remain actively involved, helping current students with shadowing opportunities. Very cool, Dave. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. Very, very happy to be here.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I know we first kind of connected back in late winter, spring. You gave me a phone call, and this is where I first learned your name. You were asking about opportunities at the event center, and then it turned out, me and Kevin Moore, the vice president of advancement at Prep, came to meet with you, and it just was great connecting with you, hearing the stories from your time at Prep, and I'm like, we need to get you on the podcast. So
this is terrific, and it's great to meet the new leadership team at Prep.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff happening, and
Indeed,
I know
indeed.
we were talking about, fingers crossed, potentially your granddaughter coming to Prep. She's in 8th grade, so me and you are working on getting her there.
We are. There's an army trying to get her to come to Prep. She, as you mentioned, her mom went to Villa. She knows that I'm a big Prep advocate, so I think with help from you, Jimmy, we have her committed to at least going to the open house.
That's
maybe
right.
Shadowing, but we'll work on her.
Well, the open house is always a great opportunity, and anybody listening to the podcast who knows of middle school kids, that's coming up later in October as an opportunity to come through the doors of Prep and be able to just tour around. No pressure, visit the school, see what's happening at Prep. And then from there, there's opportunities for the kids to shadow and do those opportunities as well. But quite the background. I mean, it must be pretty neat opportunity to look back on your time and reflect a little bit. And appreciate you coming on to talk about some of this stuff.
When I hear the introduction and when I just really preparing for this, I'm thinking, gosh, 1973, 50 years ago, we just celebrated last summer our 50th reunion. And when I talk to others, my colleagues who are in their 20s, it's like they think I was born during the Civil War. So when I think of all this, it's just a lot of this comes with age, with the experience and so forth, but I've been very blessed.
Yeah. Well, take us back to 1973, or the 1970s, I should say, and just kind of reflecting on your time at Prep a little bit. What was it like for you as a student at Prep during those days?
Sure. Well, I went to St. Peter's Cathedral, and just kitty corner from Prep, so we had some, at least by seeing the Prep kids coming and going, and we'd go over to the Cathedral and we'd see all that. But it was very intimidating, going from 8th grade to Prep, and you got to take yourself all the way back to those times. And I was really fearful. I was like, oh my gosh, what's this going to be like as an incoming freshman? And But you find your way, and it's just been an amazing experience. I really have never had to prepare for something like this and think hard about what those memories are. But I came up with a few, and the one that really resonates with me when I think about my experiences there, it goes back to the sisters. Mm. And the sacrifice they made. They were not in the limelight. They were they had prayers at 5 a.m. They'd walk from 8th and Liberty to prep. Mm. And I believe there were over 10, maybe, I think I made a count when I looked at the yearbook of 13. But they're up early, prayers, they're walking to prep. They have a full day at prep with a bunch of not so respectful students at the time, but we weren't. And then they'd walk back to 8th and Liberty and have an evening of chores and work. Some would actually go to the Cathedral. They'd clean the Cathedral. They would do those sorts of things. So I wish I had appreciated then what I know now about the Sisters of St. Joseph. So when I think of my prep days, I go back really to them. And I might be jumping ahead, but there's a few sisters that really come to mind. Sister Jean Baptiste, Sister Ellen Denise taught calculus, and many, many others. Yeah. So that's my fondest memory. I have others, of course.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see all these years later the marrying between prep and villa to now be co-ed Cathedral Prep, but us carrying that villa legacy and just understanding that relationship with the Sisters of St. Joseph was long before any kind of merge of the schools. To your point, the sisters that have been there through the years are very impactful parts of our history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all my sisters went to Villa, so they also know what it was like being taught by the nuns, and that whole experience was just amazing for them.
Yeah, those are certainly some of the things. I didn't get to know many of the ones that you just mentioned, but the name Sister Baptiste, I've heard her name plenty of times from people who had her as a teacher and just how amazing she was.
Yeah, just a delightful, and I had the pleasure of working with her on some board of directors. At the time it was Harbor Creek School for Boys, it's now Harbor Creek Youth Services, so I was able to reconnect with Sister many, many years later, and we became fast friends and just a delightful, smart, lovely person.
Now, you were joking before we started the podcast that going to Cathedral Prep wasn't a choice for you back then. It was more of, this is where you're going.
Of course.
But you did just mention it was intimidating at first coming over there.
It was.
When you look at Cathedral Prep back then, I guess it wasn't so much a choice for you, but I guess reflecting on that experience of going from St. Pete's to then going to Prep, what were some of the biggest transitions for you as becoming a student at Prep that you began to realize, wow, I love and appreciate Prep for all these reasons?
So I think when you look at, you progress to the 4 years, but the first year you come in, as a freshman, you can't find your ways. You have to learn time management when you have 22 minutes for lunch. Right? And you're running between classes, and if you're late for 30 seconds, you're at the head office. So the transition was just those sorts of things, the time management, running around the classes, trying to get from here to there. But I think where it became easier is when you started joining extracurricular activities. In my case, it was joining sports. You start having some friendships well beyond just the grade school. And that helped with the transition there. It just felt like team, there's collaboration, you get to know the teachers, they're actually more in your camp than not. They just really want you to succeed. They want to teach you, they want to coach you. So as that developed freshman year and later on in the balance of the 3 years, that really, really helped with the transition.
Yeah. And you were speaking of lunch and the 22 minutes you had back then. I joke with the students nowadays, because you've been in our new Student Life Center where the cafeteria is. Oh, they have no idea what it's like to go down to the basement of the Cathedral for lunch.
That's right.
I just think back to my days, and it's a sprint down the hallway because you only have, I think we had 27 or 30 minutes at the time. To get down there, eat your lunch, then make your way back to class.
Oh, that's a good point. You're right. You're in the basement. You have you have to go to your locker, and then you got to race over to the science building, and it's like you're lucky if you get there on time. And again, if you didn't, you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
You asked about other memories. One that I really think of is our rallies, our assemblies, especially the ones that were held either the day of or the day before the sports, a really important game, and I'll take like a Prep McDowell or something where there's a really fun rivalry. But I don't know if you know of Mr. Len Sitersky. Does that name ring a bell?
The name definitely rings a bell, okay. Mr. Sitersky.
Well, back then he was everything. When I graduated in '73, Mr. Sy, we called him, was one of the assistant headmasters.
Okay.
So he went faculty and was there, I don't know how many years he was there, but we all just knew Mr. Sy as this great person. He was just so much fun, and he was just a good man. But at these rallies, getting everybody psyched up for the game, football, basketball, whatever it is, he'd get up on stage, and he was just a quiet man, and he'd just walk up there, and we all knew what was going to happen. And the whole place just starts buzzing. And back then, I think the Audi was filled with 1,200 kids.
Right.
I mean, so just think about that. So in this small place, you got 1,200 kids, and here comes Mr. Sy, and the place starts roaring. He wouldn't say a word. He would just rip off his jacket, and then rip off. Have you heard this, Jimmy?
No, I haven't. Not this one, Mr. Sitersky. Yeah.
Mr. Sy would rip the jacket off, rip his shirt off, and there he is in his T-shirt with his hand. And then what we would do is just run out the front door.
Yeah.
Have you heard this?
Yeah.
So we'd go on 10th Street, run it up and down, having fun, yelling and screaming, but it certainly got us excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the best memories a lot of us from prep have are those rallies, how much fun those were.
Yeah, and that, you think about it at the time, you wouldn't think about it, but now we're talking about it here 50 years later, and that was really part of the brotherhood. We all have something in common that we just carried through our lifetime, and that's just one of many things, including the sports, but those assembly, those rallies, you're all together, you're doing fun, stupid stuff, and it just builds that brotherhood.
Well, I was just talking to Mr. Joe Bell yesterday. He's part of the faculty members who leads up the rally crew. Mm-hmm. They're getting ready to they've been planning a rally for the Prep McDowell game coming up in a couple weeks here. So they're getting geared up and ready for the first rally of the year, big time football game. So yeah, that tradition lives on at Prep. So, just one more question about kind of in regards to Prep specifically. Can you share with us a little bit about how Prep helped prepare you for your professional life, the experiences you've had in your career, and are there lessons that you took from those times that continue to help guide you even today?
Yes. Just in our name, Cathedral Prep, and so I'm coming out of grade school in the Prep. We didn't really think preparatory. It's just Prep.
Yeah,
that's
right.
The name. But when you get out, you go into college, and you think, oh gosh, this was a preparatory school. It prepares you for college and life. Mm-hmm. So now I get it. It comes with age. But when I think then about what maybe you were not aware of at the time, but now I'm certainly aware of it, it's a number of things. One would just be, the discipline. Taking responsibility for yourself. So important. I don't even need to say what that is. It's just so important in every aspect of our life, whether it's career, parenting, doesn't matter. So that just self-discipline, you just didn't get away with anything there. And it was, at the time, it was difficult and tough, but we always thought it was fair. And of course, our best teachers, the fondest memories of those in leadership and in faculty were the ones that were tough. And the ones that were tough were usually always on our side. Not usually, they were all on our side. And now we understand that. So that whole idea of self-discipline, taking responsibility for yourself, those are some attributes that were the foundation of Prep. No question about it.
Yeah.
Just this whole idea of integrity. So, you just they grow you as a good moral person. They teach these fundamentals of being a great Christian, and so that was super important. Another I would think is just resilience. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we learn those in sports. So here we are entering sports, whether I was fortunate to be on the basketball team, and on JVs I had Mr. Flaherty. And that was interesting. But what a great coach, what a great man, and a great experience. But so you get the resilience, and I track and field as well. So where you have setbacks and difficulties and so forth, you just learn that resilience.
Yeah.
And we were so blessed to have, like Mr. Flaherty and so many other coaches that you just learn from. And I would say my first mentors were coaches at Prep.
Yeah. Well, everything you're talking about, it just resonates with me as well because, at Cathedral Prep, the academics, the sports, everything we do is to help these kids pursue it at a high level, right? We want them to be successful in all areas in which they pursue. Those things are the vehicles in which we can teach them the things like discipline, responsibility. I wrote down accountability, integrity, resilience, all the things you just talked about. That for me was one of the shifting things in my experience at Prep 2 was, playing baseball at Prep. It's like you're playing with the best of the best, and you have to learn these different things to be successful, and that's what the coaches want out of you. It's what your teachers want from you. So everything you were saying was just resonating with me as well, just based on my same experience. It's a pretty neat thing.
I know we were kidding about the 22-minute lunches and so forth, but when you're racing from the basement to the science hall, it really is a lesson in time management. So you don't know that at the time. It's just the pain running down the hall and hoping to get there, but it really is. It's time management. And again, as little as it may seem at this moment, and not being aware of it back then, there was a good lesson there in time management.
Absolutely.
Be there on time, don't be late.
And it reminds me of Father Jabo, who we mentioned the bio, and we'll talk about it in a little bit when you were part of the decision naming him as the headmaster. But he had a saying I'll never forget. It was, the decision to come to Cathedral Prep isn't a 4-year decision; it's a 40-year decision. And it just always stuck with me. And again, when you're young, you don't appreciate it as much as till years later, and you start to meet alumni like yourself, and you see, wow, that is such a true statement. It's not just about the 4 years that you're choosing a high school. It's about the rest of your life and what that will set you up for success long term, between the things you're going to learn at Prep, but then also the connections, the network, being able to have conversations like this with you and just sharing that brotherhood together because of our affiliation of Prep. Talking a little bit about your career path and different things that you've been able to accomplish. It's pretty neat to hear the different responsibilities you've had, the companies you've started. Can you talk to us a little about the transition from working at Marine Bank, and then eventually you founded Heritage Trust Company? I guess what motivated you to move to being an employee working somewhere to then taking on the entrepreneurial venture that you began there?
Sure. I really never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I think back when I did my thesis, when I got my MBA here at Gannon, it was on the propensity of entrepreneurship. I don't even know where I came up with that name, but it was on entrepreneurship. And even now it surprises me when I'm telling you this, Jimmy, like, where did that come from? So I guess I did have that propensity. I think in my belly I always wanted to have my own business. Never thought what it would be, but I just thought building something. I like to build stuff. And so the transition was, I was so fortunate to be a part of Marine Bank. And I would say back then all the banks were very local. They all knew about Cathedral Prep. And so when I said I was a graduate, no question about it. It elevated me just for the fact that I went to Cathedral Prep, because everybody knew that there's a discipline, there's good academics, and so forth. So even early, right out of school, I was, reaping the benefits of having come from Prep. So I had some good mentors there. It was a good ride. It was fun. And then local banks were being acquired by out-of-town banks. And kind of the fun went out of it a bit, and we became branches. So if you think about where I'd like to build stuff and be visionary with others, and we're sort of on our own, being independent. Well, that kind of went away when we became a branch. And for some, they build beautiful careers from it, and it's where they belong and where they've really succeeded. So it's not a knock on the big bank. It just wasn't for me. So with that as an idea, I was young, married, 2 kids. Really didn't have much money saved. I mean, I worked for a bank. They didn't pay much back at then. So it was pretty scary, but I wanted to get out. I was offered a job with the bank to move to Stuart, Florida. I was offered another position at the bank. This is PNC now, to move to Philadelphia. And with my family here, local, I just didn't want to go. So it was, in a way, accidental that I got into this, but I did have that propensity. So I just thought, okay, I came out of banking. I know a bit about wealth management and banking. It's becoming less local and more out of town. And I'm thinking, well, okay, let's have local, let's have in town. And so I was just then, I just decided I'm going to do it. And Jimmy, I'll just tell you a quick story. So I had to pay $3,268 for the PA Department of Banking and Securities just to get an application to form Heritage Trust Company.
Wow.
So I remember taking it against a MasterCard. At the time, I didn't have the money. Dropped it in the mailbox, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? But, you know, I came out of my comfort zone there, which was difficult for me. But that's, again, going back to prep. Again, you weren't aware at the time, but you're out of your comfort zone on many things because we were pushed, whether by your coach and so forth. So I would say even that, in that moment, it's some of the things that we're building at prep and didn't know about. Come out of your comfort zone, go ahead and put yourself out there, take some risks, and it certainly goes back to my days at prep on that. So I did that, started Heritage Trust Company. It was a huge success. I was very fortunate to have John Masterson, who I graduated in 1973. He was a colleague of mine in the business as well, and John did a beautiful, beautiful job. He's now deceased, but it was fun being reconnected with John and some other prep graduates. Ended up selling it to Northwest Bank, took some time off, and then I went into the parent broadcast business. So that transition was scary. It just felt natural to me. It wasn't easy, but you learn and adjust,
Well, one of the things that sticks out to me with that story is you bet on yourself, right? I mean, when you take that risk, you're basically saying, and we didn't talk about this, but one of the major things that I've also got out of prep is like my confidence grew in myself because of all the things you've talked about.
100%.
Where when you look back on, you're saying these things that helped me become this person that I was ready to take that risk. You were growing your confidence all through those years. So by the time that decision came of having to get the money, you said, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself that I can make this work with the great team around you, with the plan you had, everything you knew. That I just thought, as you were sharing that story, that's a great story to really, for people to learn on, is sometimes you got to take that step, you got to take that risk. But it's also about the confidence in yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself that I can do this, I can be successful.
Right, and that perfectly said. And so you're betting on yourself, but there's always this other voice in your head. What are you doing? You know, is this really going to work? You have a lot on balance with the family and these sorts of things. You should have stayed in the status quo and so forth. But if somebody is even thinking about being an entrepreneur, I'd love to talk to them. And even if I jump ahead for a moment, we'll talk about the shadowing program. But I've had the pleasure of meeting with some young kids already there. And I'll ask them, you know, what kind of career do you think you want to have? Big, small, and so forth. So this just seems to be my sweet spot.
Well, and one of the questions I was excited to ask you about is this one here about you've launched several startups, and we've been talking about that. But like looking at your perspective now, looking back on startups and starting a company. You know, the way I phrased the question was, what challenges did you face, you know, as an entrepreneur? How would you navigate them? And I think in addition to that, I almost want to get your thoughts on, looking back, what maybe would you have done different now knowing what you did about starting those companies? So, sorry, it's a little bit broad and big question, but take it as you will.
Sure. Great question. So I've had 6 startups. And not all are successful. I've had some that crashed and burned, but that's what it. You know, they say that 80% of startups fail within the first 3 or 5 years. So you're not going to always bat 6 for 6.
Yeah.
So, but even with the ones that I would call didn't succeed, which means they got to a certain stage and we said now it's time to get out. You just learn so much, and honestly, I think it's an old cliche. You're going to learn as much from your failures as you do with your successes, and so that certainly applies to this. So I would say each had their own unique challenges and successes. And how about we talk about parent broadcast? That was one that I had really the most fun with earlier in my career, and as you mentioned, Cathedral Prep and 4 other schools within the Erie Diocese were my first schools, my first customers. And when I sold it, 3 years later, I had over 400 schools.
Wow.
So I was fortunate to, it was nice.
That's
so Villa Maria was one, Little Villa was one, Cathedral Prep, of course, and then Sacred Heart, and some others, I think Blessed Sacrament at the time. But that was the challenges there is in this particular case, you're introducing something new. It was basically automating phone trees, what it was. So it's a new concept, but we're right at 9/11, the preparedness, so everybody was trying to get ready for that. And so it was just good. It was just lucky, really, at the time. So it wasn't a skill necessarily. It just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And there was a need. So in this particular case, I wasn't trying to create a need. There was a need, and they were coming to me. So it was a matter of they don't know who I am. There's only 2 others in the country. You need to get out, and so you learn about Google Analytics and SEO and all that stuff that I had no idea about.
Right.
But you just learn, it's fun and so forth. So Parent Broadcast, I would say one of the with that is just, it's something new.
Yeah.
It's like the fax machine way back. You probably don't even know what that is, Jim. But you just got to educate people on the use, and you take it from there. So that was a lot of fun. Others, maybe some common denominators are I would say, I mean, we're in an incubator here at Gannett.
Right.
So my company, Evident Financial, is sitting here at this moment. We're in the Erie Technology Incubator at Gannett. And so we're in that ecosystem of entrepreneurs. So I think there's in this this ecosystem right here, including the IHAC building, which is between here and Prep, there's several companies. And so we get the pleasure of mentoring these companies, getting really intimate with their business plans and so forth. One of the common things that I see is that failure to do a proof of concept. So I get super excited about this technology, let's say, okay, and it's going to revolutionize this. And it's just, you think about some engineers that are super, super smart. They're writing these really creative apps and so forth. And somebody else, one would just be, someone, let's say, knows how to bake pies, and everybody tells them these are the best pies ever, the best cakes. You ought to start your own business. And so, you fall in love with the product, you fall in love with the service, you fall in love with the technology, and you fail to do a proof of concept. And that is, will it be accepted in the market? Are there other competitors and things like that? So each of these startups, I had to learn that, is spend very little money up front until you go through proof of concept, test it against the market, and see if it can survive. And while you start testing it, you start thinking about pricing points and all these other things, and marketing, all these other things to bring a company successful. So long-winded answer, Jimmy, to your question, that I would say common to always is just go to the very basics of a business plan. There's many, many books out there that will coach you on how to start up a new business. So if anybody's listening to this, and some of the students that we shadow, if they have a interest in that, I always take them back to just always have the basics of what it means to bring up a business, and don't fall in love with your product or service first. Spend a whole bunch of money and find out later that there's no place in the market for it.
Well, anybody who's an aspiring entrepreneur that's listening to this, that's gold right there. And I would even say for them to pause this, rewind it, listen to your answer again, because there's so many tips in there about you've learned a blueprint, right, on how to start a company the right way and how to make it successful. And those are things with experience that you've figured out through the years, that now when you sit down with these companies that you're mentoring, you can almost immediately point out what they need to do better and how they can improve. Just within probably, I'm sure, an hour meeting, you can already leave them with a list of things they can start working on right away.
Yeah, and just point them in the right direction of things. So there's a couple books that are just Bibles for me. Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited, which is, every aspiring entrepreneur should read this. And what I like about that, he says most that want to start their own business, he views that as, what does he call that? A entrepreneurial seizure. Meaning that they have these, really good ideas, but it's just not going to go anyplace because they didn't put in the time to pay attention to the basics.
Really good stuff. I mean, that's worth its weight in gold right there, just listening this far in the podcast. And then additionally, I want to talk to you about leadership as well, because I think there's the business plan, there's things as an entrepreneur that you figure out as you go, the marketing, all the different things, and obviously, financials. But you look at the leadership component of being a successful business owner. What's your take on leadership? I'll leave it kind of general as a question, not so specific, but what's your take on leadership and the role it has in being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I will have to say that leadership did not, this is going to sound strange, does not come easy for me. Okay, I can build stuff by myself. I shouldn't say I can. I feel comfortable in that space of building stuff and research and proof of concept, all these things we just talked about. I feel very comfortable with that, and I love the research behind it. And so where I can bring up a business, we'll take Parent Broadcast, for example. So you bring up the business. I was really myself, right? I might outsource certain things. And by the way, the technology behind Parent Broadcast was out of a tech company in Akron, Ohio, run and owned by Tom Zostowski, who I graduated Cathedral Prep with.
Wow.
Okay, so
how neat.
Yeah, how neat is that?
Yeah.
So Tom and I connected, and we did this. So I lost my train of thought here.
No, talking about leadership, and you're
thank
saying
you.
not one of your necessary strengths,
There you go.
but more your strength is building.
There you go.
Yeah.
So here's your success. Be careful what you wish for. So Parent Broadcast is one that is successful, and now I have to take it to the next level. Take it to the next level means in hiring, employment.
Right.
So, and even Heritage Trust Company, starting it from zero, and at the end had 60 employees. So let me just bridge back to that. That's actually more applicable, I think. So the leadership from the beginning is just leading yourself and pushing yourself. And as you grow, you have to bring on new employees. And like I said, at the end, there were 16 employees. It didn't come comfortable for me. The leadership, the hiring, the human resource aspect of it, I needed to farm that out. So I think what I learned there is where are your gifts, where are your limitations, what do you like to do? And you would think that someone that starts a business, the leadership is going to be one of their key attributes. I struggled with that. So what I learned is just know your lane. And so I would hire out, others that would be like your chief operating officer. I mentioned John Masters. He was wonderful in sales. So he did a much better job for me in sales. So as a leader, I would say, okay, here's my limitation. Here's what I don't like. Here, look at these guys. They have these women. They have the skill sets in order to do that. So that to me is leadership. You're always not leading everybody, but sometimes it's giving it up to somebody else that has a skill set you don't have. I really had to learn that, and that changes for every stage of a business. So if it does go from startup to success, there's leadership skills that are needed at every stage. It may be something different. And again, so if you're not comfortable in that space, find other people that can do it, where they can also lead a team.
So you don't have to be everything to everyone, huh?
That's a good way of saying it. No, that's a great way of saying it.
Yeah, I think sometimes...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think sometimes, me naturally, I feel pressured. I need to be the one who has the answers to all things for everyone, and I think it's just a natural thing, whether it's just that need to want to help, but then also, I think sometimes for some leaders, it's an ego thing. They don't want to give off and delegate in the right ways. They want to be the one to get the credit for everything. But in the end, that's not going to lead to ultimate success.
It is not, right? And that's where you start failing.
Yeah.
Stuff starts crumbling. Other competitors come around you and they start getting at your market share.
Right. Yeah. It's been fun reflecting with you on these different things, and I'm learning a lot personally sitting here. You can see I've been taking notes on some of the stuff you're saying and whatnot. But when you look back over your career and, from the banking world to the businesses you started, what is some of the stuff you're the most proud of looking back and to carry on with that? And what is your definition of success? Kind of twofold question there.
Sure, and I'll limit it to success to career success. Obviously, I think, Jimmy, you told me a moment ago you have 4 young kids.
Yeah.
So if you were to define success, it's going to be you as a husband, you as a father.
Correct.
And that's where your heart is, right? And so your definition of success is be a good father, be a good husband. So we'll step out of that for a moment and we'll just go into career here. So I would say if where the most success, I guess we would say, is where I feel that my greatest successes come from all this stuff. Let's just take Evident Financial right now. So this is another, I started the business in 2018. It's grown phenomenally. And I would say part of the success is here in Erie at my age, I can't go anywhere without finding a prep guy, right? Or a billow girl. So we just brought on some clients and they go, oh, you went to prep. I go, it just closed the business right there.
Right.
So a lot of the success that we're having here with Evident Financial is, 2 young people that work for me and some others that are independent contractors. So it's just having good people surrounding you. And like you said a moment ago, don't try to take credit for stuff. Leverage the skill sets that they have that you may not have. But I love seeing people develop. So we have 2 young folks out of Gannon, one from Germany, one from Australia, and we were able to find them here in this ecosystem. But just molding them, coaching them, and so forth is very gratifying. So I would just say one of the successes I have is just from my heart beats for helping young people. And maybe that's why, I'm so interested in the shadowing for the prep kids. So I would define that success on just bringing up people to surround the fun of running a business or operating in a business and watching them grow.
Yeah.
And when I see them growing in their career, buying homes, developing families and things like that, and they're on payroll and having fun here, is my greatest source of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Just absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It sounds like you're very big on relationships, right? And taking care of your people. And regardless of the amount of success your company can have, it's almost irrelevant to what you can do for others in the process.
Right.
Is that fair?
It is fair. So this Evident Financial is really a culmination of my career in investments, wealth management, and so it is a culmination. And again, because it's so Erie-based, the network, so the brotherhood, villa or prep, right? I say Cullen with 11 kids, it oftentimes opens doors there. And if I ever run into whether it's class of 73 or any other class of prep, that network, these 2 gentlemen who are not even from the United States, they're like, what is this prep connection? And they're just amazed on how tight this group is.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at some notes I prepared here. We still have a good group of guys and wives now that went to Villa of some of these guys. But I have a list here of 15 guys, and we get together all the time,
that's cool.
which is really nice. Well, I shouldn't say all the time. There was a separation. We were all, out to college and building young families.
Sure.
But now, several of my friends from the early 73 or around 73 are retired. So we're getting back together again, and it's really, it's great. We share stories, but it's that lifelong brotherhood. You went to prep, and it just means something that we didn't know going through it, but now we completely understand what that is. So literally lifelong friends just because of the brotherhood of prep.
Well, and it's great to see you're only 2 blocks from us, so you didn't move too far nowadays.
No, right.
I just walked right over here for our...
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, but no, just to echo that, I mean, it's so much fun to see. Every summer we host a reunion for the prep classes. Next year for 2025, it'll be classes that end with a 0 or a 5, and it's so much fun to see the classes come together. Some people, it's their first time seeing classmates in 40 years. And for others, they come every 5 years because they enjoy it and they're able to. For some, it's not always as easy because they move out of town and they come back. But it's so much fun to see them share stories together, laugh together. A lot of times they'll tell me the stories because they've already told each other 20 times.
Yeah, sure.
And for me, it's a great joy. So it's great to hear about nowadays for you having those groups of people that you still get together with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that our 50th reunion was last year, and I was fortunate. My daughter, who went to Villa, is on that rotation meet. So she and her buddies were there as well. I'd encourage anybody that's even thinking about a reunion, definitely go.
Yeah.
And you definitely will reconnect with others that you'll be happy you did.
Yeah.
And you'll just, again, understand the importance of Cathedral Prep and wherever you can help with donations or volunteering and these such. So it really reignites this connection with prep. Encourage anybody that's even thinking about it to attend the reunion.
Well, and I'll say this summer for 2024, we hosted the reunion at the school this year for the first time. I mean, when the event center opened in 2010, that following summer, we hosted a reunion there, and it's been there every year since, so since 2011. It was the first time hosted in the school, and it was so much fun for people to walk the halls who hadn't been there. There was over 400 people who came this past summer.
Wow,
so our plan is for every year now to keep doing it at the school as a fun way to get people back in the school, to see the building, share the stories, and do all that. No, this has been a lot of fun, and walking in, I saw the yearbook sitting out on the table. It's great. I still have my yearbooks, and we have a whole, at our advancement house, we're in the old headmaster's house, that's where my office is. we have a whole cabinet full of every yearbook that we've collected, so we have everybody's yearbook if anybody wanted to come by and see them for reference. But pretty neat to see when you fast forward, a few years later, you were serving on the board of directors at Prep. And you were the board chair, and I already mentioned in the bio, you were there when you guys selected Father Jabo as the headmaster. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like, kind of all those years later, coming back to Prep, serving on the board of directors, and kind of talk to us about, were there any changes that you were a part of and developments? Sure. Obviously, Father Jabo was a big one, but just during that time in the early 2000s when you were on the board.
Sure. I'm trying to think how I got on the board. My guess is it was Mike McCormick.
Okay.
So I know Mike well, know the family really well. He knows the Cullens really well. And I'm going to guess it was Mike saying, Cullen, I want you to. No, wait, you will.
You will, yeah. Sounds like your decision to go to Prep was similar to your decision on the board.
Yes, and so fortunate I listened to Mike. And first thing we did is I was able to, Joe Klecker was, I'm not so sure we were on the board at that time, but Joe Klecker, who's I think a year older than I am, we were asked to come in and help in the finance department. So and we were on the ground floor. We were writing policies and procedures. We were taking everything to the next level. So Joe and I were working hours and hours and hours and getting this done, and we loved it. So you know Joe. Yes. He's wonderful to work with. So
very much.
We had a blast doing that, and we had to make a presentation with our findings to the board. And I think when we did that, they said, you guys need to be on the board of directors. So I think that's how it started. So I would say the beginning was just really Joe, me, going through all this stuff. So it started with just on the ground roots of helping develop the finance and accounting, I should say.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. So then on the board, you're open up to everything else. A lot of it was, I believe we were in, I forget what year of a strategic plan. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't developed while I was there, but we were in the phase of developing it. So we were just sort of plugging in there. So I still stayed in Joe. We sort of stayed to the finance, investment, accounting side, but we did go out to others areas. So building up athletics. What about the curriculum? These sorts of things. So I can't think of anything very specific that we did, but if I had to, it would be executing on a strategic plan that was maybe in its second or third year.
Okay.
And sort of a common thread through all that too was building up the resources in order to perpetuate Prep. There was great vision back then that it's expensive to go to the schools, and it's a hardship for many of the schools to afford this. So let's make it easier for them. Where a parent wants their child to go to Prep, we want to build up a foundation.
Yeah.
So we're on the ground floor of that. Let's make that intentional. Let's promote that. How do we do it? And in many respects, we're sort of pioneering that on how to do that. So if I had to say, though, the thing that most comes to mind during my tenure there was trying to build up these foundation endowments in order to bring scholarships and resources back to school. But it was, I really did have the privilege of being there with the transition of Father Jabo. So that was fun and interesting. It was a great time being on the board of directors.
Well, as we were talking about earlier in our conversation here, we don't always appreciate things as much when you're, a young kid as you do later on in life. And I would say even for me now, hearing the stories about you and Joe and the different board members, I was a freshman in the fall of 2007. So you look at the work you guys did to set up that foundation of allowing students to come to Prep, that it's affordable for their families, it's a great experience. I was a beneficiary of the work that you guys did. Right. So you just think about it from that context, it's like, how am I not just fortunate and grateful for the work of men like you who come back to Prep all these years later to give back, to help steward and serve the next generation of students, and I'm appreciative of that, of the work you guys did. Yeah.
Well, it was fun and happy to do it. If I can I bridge into something here that may not fall out here?
Yep.
Mother Teresa Academy.
Yes.
So Mother Teresa Academy occupies the old St. Peter's Cathedral grade school where I went. So there's an affinity there. There's a heartbeat sort of for that whole experience there. So, and I'm good friends with Jim Walczak, and I know Jim and some others were on the ground floor of making this dream a reality. And I've gone through Mother Teresa Academy a couple times, and it is just amazing what's being done there. And having it under the leadership of your team over at Prep, and the administrative and the vision and so forth, it's just perfect in my view. I've gone over there, and if anybody has an idea of supporting Mother Teresa Academy, I urge you to go and tour that just for less than an hour. You'll see the students in the classrooms. You walk in, they'll stand up, they'll greet you. It's really a great energy. It's a good environment, good curriculum. And if you look at these kids, they're in a zip code that really, you would argue, can't afford this. But they can because of the good works of a whole bunch of people making it affordable. Some really, really, really great things are done there.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful feeder system into Cathedral Prep or some other, as long as they're getting a good education, getting these good Christian values. They're learning stuff in an environment that they love.
Yes.
Right? There's meals that they may not get. They have safety that they may not get at home. It's just a wonderful thing that's happening at Mother Teresa Academy.
Yeah, we started Mother Teresa Academy in 2018, and it was started with the idea of we're going to have a K through 8 grade school. The idea was it wasn't a grade school for necessarily quote-unquote Cathedral Prep families, meaning just because your kid goes to prep, you're going to send them to this grade school. It's a mission school. It's a school for families who can't afford a private school, where the families aren't paying much of a tuition at all. I mean, you're talking pennies on the dollar compared to what they would be paying elsewhere. But to your point, we're loving these kids, we're serving these families, and now we've had enough data come through where we can see these kids at their trajectories where they come in when they start, and then by the time they're graduating, and then they go to a school like Cathedral Prep or another college preparatory school here locally. They're doing phenomenal. There's a kid I was just hearing a story about yesterday. He was one of the first classes at Mother Teresa Academy, first or second classes. He went his way through high school. Now he's at Duquesne University studying engineering. And he was keeping in touch with Mr. Jason Lattiser, who's overseeing both campuses right now. And Jason was telling me this kid's doing awesome. He's at Duquesne. I think he's a junior now. And it's just that kid would not have had that opportunity if it wasn't for the foundation of being at Mother Teresa Academy. So to your point, the people who are supporting that school, and if you're listening to this podcast episode and you want to come check out Mother Teresa Academy, reach out to me, reach out to Dave, reach out to any of us, and we'll help connect you with somebody to get you a tour of the school, learn more about the mission of the school and how you could help get involved with those kids.
It's the kids and also the parents of the kids, too. They're fighting a good fight. It may not be the best scenario for the parents or for them to have their child getting this sort of education where it is safe, they're getting a meal and so forth. It really helps the whole household.
Yes.
So it goes just beyond that child in that classroom. And I've seen it. I've seen the moms and the dads fighting a good fight, coming in there, just sense of joy and just happy that their child's been able to take advantage of the whole experience at Mother Teresa Academy.
That's right. And staying on the topic of student support and being somebody who's actively involved in that, we've referenced several times about the shadowing opportunities that you've offered. That kind of spurred from the conversation that me and you had with Kevin Moore back in the spring, and you offered if there's ever a kid who wants an opportunity to come learn what you do about this world of business and whatnot and Evident Financial, what motivates you to still, after all these years, stay involved and to offer those opportunities for kids?
There is just such a strong sense of, I don't know if fulfillment's the right word, but I'll give you an example. So we've had 3 students come through here, right? All 3 very different. Not sure if they were told to be here or wanted to be here. I would hope that they wanted to be here. But the sense of they learned something. I'll ask at the end, how was this experience for you? And being able to answer that question, we had to build this trust. We had to build this fun around it. And we got good feedback. This is really good. I would have never thought about this. And then challenging them to get out of their comfort zone and things like that. So it's not a lecture as much as kind of what this is like, Jimmy, a conversation.
Yeah.
We did a case study on a financial planning. I'll give you one example. So we said, here's a case study. Here's a husband and wife. They're about to retire. They have kids. They have grandkids. So we just scenarioed this out. It was on an agenda piece of paper, and asked them, how would you approach this? So you think about asking a sophomore, junior, how would you, a senior, on approaching a financial planning session with a couple about to retire? They've never, ever had anything like that. It was amazing, the answers I got.
Wow.
They got the essence of it immediately, and they were afraid maybe at the first to say something because I don't want to say something stupid.
Right.
But you encourage them to, and I'll tell you what, Jimmy, I'm like, wow, I'm not going to get a good answer like this is the best answer maybe I've ever heard on this.
Wow.
It was really interesting. So there's that satisfaction. Someone's learning, they're excited about it, and they're walking out of here on cloud nine, I would hope.
Yeah.
That they learned something and it was a nice environment. So I love doing that. Just because you see the kids leaving here and they seem to have some fun and learn something. So I hope we can even expand it further. And it's not so much shadowing as much as it's hard to shadow when everything we do here is client confidential.
Right.
But what we do is just come in the conference room that we're sitting here, give a case study out, allow them to think around this. So it's not a lecture, it's not one way. And the feedback we got from the kids is saying yes. And I would say, what can we do different? And we've gotten differently, and we've gotten some from these young kids saying, I think I would do this. I'm like, bullseye, this is beautiful. So it's just a lot of fun.
You go back and talk with Joe, hey, we need to change our strategy on this.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when these young kids meet someone from Australia and someone from Germany, and they're both athletes, so they came here to Gannon for that. So that they like that as well, so that's fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's pretty neat to hear, and the experiences that these kids can have. I know I'm appreciative that you're willing to offer up your time to do that. You could be doing a million other things with your time, but to take the time to still sit down with those kids for that time, it's precious. And as we joked earlier, as a kid, we might not always appreciate those things, but years later, I hope those kids will look back and say, you know what, that made an impact on me, to know that was a direction I wanted to go, or that was an area I wanted to explore more, different things like that.
Can I just give you two quick examples?
Absolutely.
So a young man comes here, the first one we had. What a nice kid. But he came here, looked like he just got out of bed. His hair is everywhere, right? His shirt's wrinkled. And so he was on time.
That's
but he came here without a notepad, pencil, right? And right away I said, okay, I'm glad you showed up on time. Kudos. Glad you're here on summertime. I mean, that shows some initiative. Good on you. But you got to comb your hair, okay? And if you expect to learn something, you should have a notebook and a piece of paper here.
Yeah.
And at the end, I could tell he really enjoyed it, but I'm going to guess, like me, when somebody tells me that, I think I'll carry that into the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But it turned out he was fabulous, and he was one of them that was just really catching the essence of what we were doing here and giving some really good feedback. So
good.
Little fun story, but it's just great for us and for these young people.
Yeah. And those things go a long way.
They do.
Yeah. Well, I got one more question for you. It's a bonus one. I ask all the alumni who come on the podcast this question, but so it's been fun reflecting on all the stuff about your experience, your time at prep, all the different things. But if you could go back in time and speak at your graduation, but knowing what you know now, what would you say to your classmates at your graduation?
Wow. Bonus question, also a zinger. It wasn't on your prep list.
It wasn't on the prep list,
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. First thing, Jimmy, that comes to mind is just get involved, right? Sports, but I wish I would, out of my comfort zone. For example, public speaking is not my gift. It's not my comfort zone. I wish I was on the debate team. I would have never done that. But if I would talk and speak to graduating classes, get out of your comfort zone. This is where you're going to learn the most. You may be natural in track and field, natural here in baseball or soccer and so forth, and that's great. But what's outside your comfort zone? And I know that prep offers so many extracurricular activities and clubs and things like that. Yeah. And so I think what I would tell them is pick something that you don't think is a natural fit for you or takes you out of your comfort zone, and do that. For me, it would have been debate, right? I love it. I'll tell you what, Jimmy, I'm finding that the level of maturity for these kids, I'm going to say, was better than when I was there. Wow. We were a bunch of goofballs and all that. We had that strict discipline. You would think that we would maybe have a level of maturity because we were sort of forced to have it. No, I'm seeing this level of maturity that is really impressive. And so if I'm speaking there, I would just say, whatever you're doing, keep it up with this sense of the values that prep is teaching and so forth. So I really like that. I'm really not answering your question. I think the first one would just come to mind is get out of your comfort zone, get involved with areas that you wouldn't otherwise be. The other is I would have these Christian values. Didn't really appreciate it back then. I mean, at all.
Right.
You know, it was being infused to us. We didn't know it, but I was fortunate to be one of 11 kids, and it was a strong Catholic Christian background around us. And with prep supporting that, again, really, until I became a parent like you are, Jimmy. So you know, life is tough. Life can be tough, and you have to have the strong Christian values that really grew up at St. Peter's Cathedral and prep, and the support of my parents. But you have to fall back to something that's a lender of last resource, and it's your Christian belief. It's God. It's Jesus, and prep was so important to me. So I don't know if I was addressing the class, if that would resonate with them, but I would just say it will someday. Pay attention to develop a relationship with God, and it'll carry you through the rest of your life, and particularly in the tough times. I probably would say those two things. Come out of your comfort zone and make sure your Christian values are strong. Pay attention to what they're telling you at prep, because it's good stuff. You're going to need it someday.
And give a nice roll Ramblers, right?
And give them a nice roll Ramblers.
Yeah. No, I didn't give you any prep time on that question. It was kind of the bonus one I snuck in here at the end on you, but I couldn't agree with you more. You know, looking back on my time as well, I wish I would have got more out of my comfort zone. So you saying that really hits the nail on the head for me, just thinking about those early years when you do have the opportunity to explore, and I still can explore and do that, but those years, so crucial. And then, number one, your relationship with God, your relationship with Christ. Just understanding that being such a rock to your life through the good times, the tough times, all the different experiences we're going to have. It's what separates us being prep and every other school is we can celebrate our faith.
Absolutely.
We can do that at Cathedral Prep, which we're proud to do, and sharing that brotherhood together, and now sisterhood as well. But Dave, this has been so much fun. You had so many good things to share with us. I always enjoy these conversations to hear about, my guest, about your time at Prep and the experiences you've had, and it was kind of a little bit extra bonus with you having the experience on the board of directors and whatnot, your involvement with the school through all these years, and just want to thank you for everything you shared with us today, and thank you for being willing to come on as a guest for the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been my pleasure, and I have to give you guys kudos. I'm really reconnecting now. Again, we're a block and a half away, so it's much easier. But Jimmy, you and your team just do an amazing job. We talk about Mother Teresa Academy. I would encourage anybody that wants to reconnect, if they're feeling a nudge to give back, get involved, attend your reunion, get a tour of Mother Teresa Academy, get to know what's happening. Excuse me, and you'll learn from it, and you'll gain something from it as well. So I appreciate everything you guys do.
No, that's awesome, Dave. Thank you so much. We love what we're doing at Prep, and we're proud of it, and we're going in the right direction, and hopefully your granddaughter will be a part of that story as well.
We'll get Team Prep behind us.
That's right. So. That's right.
Awesome.
Well, but thank you, Dave.
And thank you, Jimmy.